It will have the ability to enforce and build on the credit card reforms we passed earlier this year so that consumers aren't hit with unfair rate hikes and penalties or hidden charges. It will require brokers to look out for the interests of families if they give advice about mortgages. And it will ensure transparency and fair dealing for other financial products like bank overdraft services and payday loans. In a financial system that's never been more complicated, it has never been more important to have a watchdog function like the one we've proposed. And yet, predictably, a lot of the banks and big financial firms don't like the idea of a consumer agency very much. In fact, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is spending millions on an ad campaign to kill it. You might have seen some of these ads, the ones that claim that local butchers and other small businesses somehow will be harmed by this agency. This is, of course, completely false. And we've made clear that only businesses that offer financial services would be affected by this agency. I don't know how many of your butchers are offering financial services. Contrary to what some have argued, this agency would not restrict consumer choice and innovation. Nothing could be further from the truth. In the past, a lack of clear rules led to innovation of the wrong kind. The firms that did best were the ones who did the best job of hiding the real cost to consumers. We don't want them competing by figuring out how much they can fool ordinary Americans. By contrast, the consumer agency we're proposing would set ground rules so that firms don't have to compete to confuse families, but they have to compete to give them better choices. This will also help small business entrepreneurs who often rely on credit cards and home equity loans to finance their startup businesses. All this hasn't stopped the big financial firms and their lobbyists from mobilizing against change. They're doing what they always do, descending on Congress, using every bit of influence they have to maintain the status quo that has maximized their profits at the expense of American consumers, despite the fact that recently a whole bunch of those same American consumers bailed them out as a consequence of the bad decisions that they made. And since they're worried they may not be able to kill this agency, they're trying their hardest to weaken it by asking for exemptions from this agency's rules and enforcement, by fighting to keep every gap and loophole they can find. They're very good at this because that's how business has been done in Washington for a very long time. In fact, over the last 10 years, the Chamber alone spent nearly $500 million on lobbying. $500 million. The stories we heard today, they remind us that the American people can't afford business as usual any longer. These Americans can't afford high-priced lobbyists to argue their case. They're counting on us to be their advocates, to be their voice, to restore a sense of responsibility from Wall Street to Washington. That's why we need a consumer financial protection agency that will stand up not for big banks, not for financial firms, but for hard-working Americans. That's why we need regulatory reform that will reward innovation and competition instead of shortcuts and abuses. That's why we can't let special interests win this fight. We've already seen and lived the consequences of what happens when there's too little accountability on Wall Street and too little protection for Main Street. And I will not allow this country to go back there. It is time for us to move forward. It is time for real change. And I'm confident that we're going to get it done with the help of all the people who are here today, and most importantly, with the help of the American people who are going to demand a better deal from their financial services. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.